I once had this hippie palm reader guy tell me I carried the cross of obligation and compassion. Undeniable, he said. It's right there. It was etched into my palm. And that no matter how hard I tried, I'd always feel responsible for easing other people's suffering this lifetime. I don't know what cosmic joke he was telling, but the joke was on me because for the longest time I believed him. He declared my fate with such conviction that I may as well have ended up with a bolded, tattooed QR code on my forehead labeled obligation fool. That self fulfilling prophecy had me label myself a mystic martyr for far too long, as I took on yet another unhelpful belief that wasn't mine to begin with. But as the years went on, I continued to get frustratingly sick of myself for always helping others and being depleted and used and just flat out tired of overextending. You see, I didn't seem to have any other setting other than overgiving, blind forgiveness, and self sacrifice. I'd done it too many times, handed out compassion like candy on Halloween, while quietly accepting the cost to my own well being, financially, emotionally, and energetically. I got angry at others, at myself, at the pattern that kept looping back like some karmic groundhog day. I felt lost and helpless because I didn't know another way of being other than being there for everybody else. But just like I retrained my mind to fix the seatbelt saga after getting way too many fines for not wearing it right, I knew I'd had to do the same here. Retrain my brain, that is. Because that feeling of endless giving and never receiving, it's too heavy. It's too breathtakingly soul-sucking and shitty to stay stuck in. It took getting to the point where the disrespect wasn't just real, but was being smeared all up in my face like a dirty makeup wipe. First, there was this one ex with a particularly codependent circle. $90,000 later, I had inadvertently accepted carriage of responsibilities that fair and square belonged to his extended family. Then there was this fitness instructor, this blondie who spotted an opportunity and sprinted with it, literally. She knew exactly what she was doing it, and none of it involved integrity. I'd paid her upfront for months of training, and at first, all went well. Then came the second lot of upfront payments. But when it came time to actually show up, she was suddenly unavailable, always tied up with more important commitments, and I was expected to be understanding of the constant cancelling and rescheduling. And also, while I'm at it, why couldn't I just pay her another 3 months up front? The definition of a flaky opportunist. Then there was this one ex, over $20,000 spent cleaning up his failed business venture as he drove off into the sunset with our car, mad at me for not assisting to continue with repayments, even after my $10,000 trade-in contribution to said car that left me carless. Not to mention demanding the sale of all furniture after we ended, mostly mine, to split the proceeds, of course. And yet another ex who still owes me about 10 grand, and he swore on the Bible of his non-existent faith that he'd pay it back. And that wasn't even including the massive home reno and equipment that I paid for to support his new career endeavour, which I willingly did at the time as his supportive girlfriend. He went on to become a successful business owner, thanks to me setting him up. Not that I needed a thanks, but simply sticking to his responsibilities and his word wouldn't have gone astray. I didn't just finance endlessly either. I also provided loving home for too many to just slot right into, furniture, food, and a comfy place to rest without having to lift a finger. And while, yes, some of my ex-partners and situationships and whatever you want to call it did offer contributions, it never seemed quite to stack up against my efforts. I always carried everyone footing the bills for holidays, outings, and celebrations, a tipping of the scales that should have flung me straight into a pile of shit like in that Slumdog Millionaire movie. The biggest face slap of all, though, they all knew that I was out there on my own raising two kids who depended on me for food, shelter, and all the other life shit to be had when raising kids solo. Some people, I think, should honestly come with a care instruction tag, like clothing. They make their behavior look subtle, like they're helping you, until you realize you're the one working for them for free. Or then they ramp up the victim narrative until you're pitying them more than your own bank account once they've run it dry. The tipping point came when I loaned my then partner, this is another story by the way, around 10 grand also. At the time, again, I saw a future together. I saw it as an investment in us. He promised he'd pay it back. And to his credit, he's kept his word so far. The problem was never really him, though. It was the extended family. His, I mean. After we broke up, I learned that his family from overseas had been told by his Australian relatives that I was the one being financially supported by him and that he'd been funding my lifestyle, my two kids, apparently because I couldn't manage it myself. Meanwhile, in reality, I was the one who'd loaned him money to help him migrate and settle in Australia. Another slap in the face, based on absolutely nothing but a disgusting twist of truth. That's when I realised you can't rely on people to say or do the right thing. Not even when it's cruel, not even when it involves talking about your kids, and not even when it's complete fiction. You could do everything right, and people will still screw you if it suits them. So I got done betraying myself, no longer willing to define myself by the pain or dysfunction of others, knowing that the highest form of compassion is self-forgiveness, self-understanding, and self-preservation. Acknowledging the behaviour patterns of these unbalanced romantic entanglements was interesting in retrospect, because as soon as I saw it, I realised it had spilled over into other relationship dynamics in my life. Family, assuming I'd pick up the slack on things that should have been shared responsibilities without even asking first. Friendships, where I was always the one paying for lunches, dinners, drinks, coffees, or whatever else they couldn't do for themselves or simply didn't want to. Then there were the times I found myself overextending again, playing taxi, not just for my own kids, but from everybody else's whenever their parents couldn't be bothered. On one repeat offender comes to mind, this mum whose child was friends with mine. Every play date turned into a 2-for-1 drop-off with the younger sibling in tow. One day she cancels, literally as I pull up into their driveway to pick up their kids, claiming that she felt unwell and, gosh, who would look after their puppy, because apparently the kids were responsible for the dog. Obviously, my child was devastated, and so I said, it's fine, the puppy can come with us, especially since she'd been hinting at it the whole time anyway while I was there. Later, I found out she'd actually been out shopping all afternoon. And I remember thinking, how do people just shrug off their own responsibilities so easily while taking advantage of someone else's kindness so openly? Then there was the time I went for a massage. The lady decided I needed acupuncture too, and it was only an extra $60. Sure, why not? I thought. She stuck needles all over my head, neck, and shoulders, and then draped a very heavy towel over me so that I wouldn't get cold. Not painful, but just bloody uncomfortable. My anxiety kicked in, and suddenly I was back in primary school, frozen in another round of statues. It wasn't exactly relaxing. Within seconds, the stench slammed my nasal passage, instant, ferocious, and foul. I don't know if she was on day 6, of a colon cleanse or fresh off a bout of salmonella, but it was a miracle I didn't spew my breakfast. There was no apology, no explanation, just me, face down, asphyxiating as she swiftly left. And me there wondering how someone could do that. I should have said something when I paid, or maybe shouldn't have paid at all. It wasn't okay. I went there for relaxation and care. In any case, I handed over the cash for the needles and accepted her fume waste as the upsell. Zero respect, zero customer care, zero fucks given. Her ass fumes said it all. Don't even get me started on this next one. At around 19, I decided to learn Aussie Sign Language because, to diversify. Classes were fun, most people friendly, the teacher was great. But there was this one particular lady who always sat next to me. I was the only one who would talk to her because her personality was, well, a bit difficult. At one class, she went on and on about how much she loved my pencil case, a Noddy and Big Ears tin from the 1980s kids cartoon show. She went on about how it was so much nicer than her $2 store plastic red one and how it was rare. And she said, I never get lucky like that. I can't afford anything nice. I had heard enough stories about how unfair life was to her to know she was deep in victimhood. By the end of the class, worn down by her love bombing my tin, I half joked, if you like it that much, just take it. Without hesitation, she swooped in, emptied my pens into her tin, placed hers into mine, and snapped it shut. No thanks, no acknowledgement, no nothing. Needless to say, I never spoke to her again. I started to see all the ways I'd allowed people to breach my boundaries. Not only was I letting it happen, but I was also ushering them in like an aircraft marshaller with neon buttons. This other one still fires me up every time I think about it. A good friend asked me to help her write a massive funding application for a business she'd supposedly been dreaming about for years. It turned into a Friday evening to Sunday midnight marathon. And of course, her request came in at the 11th hour. Everything with her always did. I did want this for her so badly, though, that I threw myself into it. I got fully invested. Had she actually spent the weekend beside me, helping with her own application instead of holidaying down the coast, maybe I'd overlooked that lack of accountability. But then I found out that she never even bothered to submit it. I knew I did not deserve the disrespect, but I kept excusing people's behaviours anyway. I had to learn rather the difference between helping when it was genuine, when someone asked for it with sincerity, or when God nudges at you to step in, and overextending to my own detriment. I had to face the truth. I was not just compromising my peace. I was compromising my kids' security and my ability to care for us. It wasn't just financial, it was emotional, energetic, spiritual, all of it. I kept stepping in to save people who couldn't be bothered to save themselves. Then came the next layer of realization. At what point does helping become enabling? What a bloody multi-layered mess. Giving was my norm and kind of still is. So how would I know when I was absorbing people's responsibilities and blocking their growth? Was I standing in the way of their karmic lessons by rescuing or helping them all the time? Man, learning not to continually sacrifice myself for others has been a core soul lesson this lifetime. I had to decide. No more quick fixes, no more band-aid love and light solutions. The groundwork was necessary because every time I tried to build on sticks, the universe huffed and puffed until my little shack of illusion came crashing down. But here's the thing. Healing isn't a one-off moment. It's a consistent release, a practice, like exercising your energy field. Some days it's pure light. Other days it's dark night of the soul despair. I also learned compassion for myself is a must. An honest, no bullshit relationship with myself had to become my top priority. Sometimes that meant being selfish, insular. I needed the hibernation. Not forever, just until I got strong enough to flex my muscle of no as a complete sentence. I struggled with this. I didn't want to change who I was. I didn't want my generosity of spirit to harden. I learned to detach and to not take things personally, but also to use my discernment because energy never lies. I learned to recognize the vibe. So now I set the energetic tone. My compassion no longer extends to waving the flag for people who choose to stay stuck or unhealed. I no longer have time for bullshit, fake shit, crazy shit, dumb shit, or any shit that has nothing to do with me. Now, it's more like you either come in peace with mutual respect, reciprocal energy, or you don't get a seat at my table. No apology. I had to learn the hard way that some people permanently live at the wound station, and I'm simply not making pit stops there anymore. Because every time you lower your energy to match theirs, you step out of alignment. Naysayers and energy vampires get no airtime anymore. And anyone showing up with opportunism or manipulation, the door's that way. When I started practicing discernment, things got real. I used to collect charity cases like karmic merit badges, a hero complex in full swing. But like they tell you on the plane with the mask, real heroism is helping yourself first. Nowadays, some people get time to heal. Some get a second chance, and some get escorted off the premises, keys revoked, and the door bolted shut behind them. Because with the right people, you feel peace in their hugs and happiness in their embrace. An equal kind of give and take that doesn't require proof that they care. And that finally is alignment.